4, 3, 2, 1.
Now, customers are the backbone of any and all businesses. If you want to get more customers, we've got to seduce you all.
You've got to progress. If you want to attract bigger people in your life, then you've got to become a bigger person. You've got to become better at your skill sets. You've got to immerse yourself into personal development. You've got to find a mentor. You've got to find one or two people that have the results that you want.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Here we grow again. Welcome to another interview with the Untold Upline Secrets / the interviews. I'm excited about this one here. You know, we have been lucky enough to create some phenomenal relationships inside of this industry. However, with this series, I've only been lucky enough to interview a couple of 8-figure earners inside of this industry. You know, and we've got plenty of 6-figure earners and quite a few 7-figure earners. But when we talk about 8-figure earners, we don't have that many of those inside of here. So when you see these interviews, you definitely want to take some notes. But this gentleman, we go way back, sideline people someone that I've respected. Him and I have created a relationship over the years. I've been knowing him probably for about well over 10 plus years. He's been in the industry for a little bit longer than that. And he started off in the industry just like a lot of us, you know, just out there building normally, belly to belly, going through the whole process, but learned the game. And as he learned the game, he got smarter and smarter and smarter and really started to deploy leverage, really took advantage of that word leverage to a whole nother level. And somebody who has put his footprint on a couple of different things that has allowed him to explode his business, change his life, change his family's life, and become an 8-figure earner inside of this game. So let me bring to the stage my man, Mr. Rabu Gary. Rabu, what's going on, my brother? How are you?
What's going on, bro? I'm amazing, man. Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
So happy to have you here, bro. It's been a while. You know, you and I chop it up anytime you come into town. So it's always good to have you on the interview. But there's some people that are on here, Rabu. Some of them know you, and then some of them don't know you. So we always got to start the first question off with, who is Rabu Gary for the people that don't know?
Wow. This is how I always answer that question. Rabu Gary is you. That's my answer to that. But, you know, now to give a biological answer, young guy, 50 years old by the time you're watching this now, from Newark, New Jersey. As you mentioned, I've been in the networking industry or people industry for about 30 years. Had my lumps, bumps, and bruises. I love it sometimes, hate it sometimes, but I love people. And just a regular guy, you know, went to Rutgers University, got a couple of degrees there, started working right out of college at Enterprise Rent-A-Cars, the #1 guy they had for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And on September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11, I walked into my job and said I could never see myself being an employee anymore. And I've never worked for anyone since.
Wow. So the day before 9/11, you said?
The day before 9/11, and we were in Newark, New Jersey, literally 10 minutes from New York City.
Wow, you timed that because some things changed that day after, that's for sure, in so many different industries. But we got to ask you, so what happened that day when you walked in and said, I'm never coming back to work again? What created that opportunity for you to do that?
Bro, I always wanted to do a Harlem Nights moment. Remember when Richie said, yo, he called his son. He's like, yo, put your mom on the phone.
Right.
Come home again. Take it easy, right? So I said, one day I'll do that. And I did just that. But no, I finished the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had met Robert, had lunch with Robert Kiyosaki when I was with my first networking company called Prepaid Legal at the time, not Legal Shield, was Legal Shield now. And I met Robert Kiyosaki. And believe it or not, bro, even after having 2 degrees, the only book I've ever read cover to cover at that time was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And when I learned that I was an E, and I was in network marketing at the time, so I was an E and I was in the B quadrant. I never been in the S quadrant, but I wanted to be in the B and I quadrant. And I couldn't get in the B and I quadrant if I was going to stay at E. Either you want to say E for Enterprise Rent-A-Car or E for Employee. But I finished that book on September 9th. I quit my job on September 10th. And that's the main motivation for me quitting my job. And at the time, bro, I was making 50 grand a year. I was 26 years old. I had a company car. I didn't have to pay for insurance. I didn't have to pay for a car note. And my wife and I were living with her aunt. So we were saving money. So we was living, and my wife was making $70,000+ a year. And I walked away from that, and she thought I was flat out crazy.
You didn't tell her before, bro? I'm sure y'all had that conversation, and that's when she told you were crazy, right?
No. That morning I woke up, I called my grandmother first. I said, Grandma, I'm gonna quit my job. She's like, baby, whatever you do, I got your back. Just don't let them MFers kill you. I was like, okay. My mother was like, are you sure? I was like, yep. Then I called my sister, and she's like, look, we go back like 4 flat tires, so it is what it is. Then I called my wife, and she's like, hold on for a minute. And she put me on hold. And she's talking to one of her friends or workmates at the time, like she didn't believe this. But yeah, I was like, I just quit my job. I'm not going back.
Wow. So something within that time frame gave you that confidence. It wasn't just the book. The book, I think the book maybe hit the switch for you. But you were in network marketing at that time, right?
Yeah, I started actually July 26, 2001. I quit my job September 10th, 2001. So I was only in the industry, bro, for like a couple of months.
So in a couple of months, most people don't hit it out the park, Rabu. And I just got this feeling that you didn't go in 4 or 5 months and just start making 10, 15, 20 grand a month. So what happened in that process?
Bruh, I made $50 on my own without having to punch a clock, and I was turned out. I made $50, 50 on my own. And they told me every time I helped somebody get a legal plan, I was going to make $10. You couldn't have told me anything better than that, because I was like, I'm going to talk to everybody on the planet. That $50 success story between July 26th and September 10th, that's how long it took me to make that $50. You know, that's all I need to make, man. I was out.
Wow. So you did that. Did you reach 6 figures inside of prepaid legal? Yeah, yay or nay?
After 9 years, 8.5 years. It
so
took me to make 6 figures.
01 to what? 2000 and what was that? 2009, 2010?
Yeah, but I still have it down here in my drawer from 01, like 2009. That's when I got the 6-figure ring. But every year, man, I would make like 75, 65, 80,000. One year I missed it by like 7,000. I kept missing that elusive 6 figures. Yep.
Okay. So what propelled that though? Because you $50, you made $50 in a couple of months, and it took some time. And this is part of this process of really interviewing key people like yourself, because obviously we telling the truth to people like, hey, you don't go from $50 to 6 figures the next year. Like, what was that process over the years, things that you had to learn, how you had to change as a person and become a different leader in order to even hit that number? Wow.
So obviously it started with personal development. And as I mentioned, you know, the first book I read cover to cover was Rich Dad Poor Dad. Well, if you look behind me now, I have a library, many books that I've written, many books that I've read rather, many audios I've listened to. So I had to go on a deep dive of personal development. Growing up as a kid, my mom always made sure that we read religious books. I had to read the entire Quran, the Torah, and the Bible. Okay, all 3. She wasn't that concerned about anything else. So while I wasn't a fan of reading, you know, she told me, if you ever want to become a great leader, be able to meet people where they are. And at that time, all I could think about, the only way I could reach people where they are is where they spiritually sit. And so when I joined network marketing and I started reading the Think and Grow Rich, is the How to Win Friends and Influence People. Start listening to Jim Rohn, Paul J. Meyer, you know, who became a personal mentor. Man, I was in the books and in the audios, and along that way, and that's what kept me in the game, because I wasn't making that much money. You know, I could have got a job, and nothing wrong with a job. You know, I used to be so upset when people used to call JOBs just over broke. I didn't like that, right? Why are you going to diss somebody else's stuff to make you sound better? But I could have got a job and did the industry part-time along the way, but I was so drenched in personal development, which was kind of like the 52 fake out, to be honest with you, because it kept me from quitting, but it kept me growing also. So while I wasn't making any money, you know, decent money, I cut all of our expenses down, you know, so I could stay in network marketing, you know, without us being out in the streets. I made sure we lived like paupers, but at the same time, we was getting filled with leadership, growing, being amongst people like yourself, industry giants. and we were just learning and hustling hard.
So you didn't make a lot of money, but it kept you from quitting. I think that's a key statement, because I think, you know, I'm sure you believe this, that our industry is just simply personal development with a product attached to it. Like that's all it is. So it kept you from quitting. That's a big deal. Now, over that time frame though, you created a lot of relationships all over the world, numerous different companies. Tell people, why is it so important to create real sustainable relationships? Because you have a statement that you say all the time that I'm not going to steal your thunder on that statement, but I'm sure it has something to do with relationships.
Well, you know, I grew up in the inner city, and we was broke. And sometimes it meant spend the night over a friend's house if you was going to eat. It meant borrowing sugar from the next door neighbor. You know, it was all about relationships. And that's all I've ever known. You know, the highest value lies in the relationship, not in the money. And so it was second nature. Once I, you know, meet somebody like you, a solid dude. You know, once I meet somebody who's a cool person, you know, who's solid, who's about something. I don't believe in the Drake thing, no new friends. I want a lot of solid friends. You know, if I have a lot of solid friends, which I have today, I'm never going to be broke. And, you know, and I only ask of my friends what I give them. I can give you loyalty, love, and respect. And that's all I ask in return. And that's been the premise. You know, I guess one of my quotes is, you know, love people and leverage money. You know, I really believe in loving people. And I mean that because that's all I know. You know, and that's my foundation.
Gotcha. That's awesome. That's good stuff. Now, you went from the $50 to the six figures, and we had 2009, 2010. But then some things changed in your life, Rabu. You know, a lot of people look and say, oh, once we all get on this trajectory all the time, it's always roses. And you're the first one to say it, whether you on live, whether you talk about on your post, of things that you had to go through, some challenges that you had to go through that I'm sure that humbled you, but also put some fire in your butt. So what were some of those things that humbled you a little bit, bro, that made you step back for a second and change some things and then speed up the process at the same time?
Absolutely. So after we got the ring and legal shield, a good friend of mine, Suleiman Rahman, he had left, and a couple other people left Legal Shield. They started to branch off. You know, he went to Organo Gold. My man John Malott went to Secret. Jeff Olson, he went over to Nurium. Like, it was like a mass exodus, and a lot of the top leaders left. And but many of them are still there today. I'm very good friends with them, like my good friend Darnell Self. And so when I left, we got into a little beef with my first recruit of all time, you know, and I got terminated from the company, you know. So now there were some people in the company, and I take responsibility for everything I do, but there are some people in that company that were trying to character assassinate me so I wouldn't bring everybody with me, you know. And I guess that's a technique that's done in the industry. And so they really tried to make my name, even though they had nothing to say bad, but they tried to do everything to make my name bad. And so when I transitioned to Organo Gold, it was tough because I went to Organo Gold, and while I made six figures there faster, like in a year and a half, where it taken me 9 years because I learned some things along the way. It was if I didn't deal with the opposition, I would have did it. I would have blown it out the water. But I'm glad I dealt with the opposition because I learned some things along the way. I started to learn more about people. Humility. Oh my God, we were in foreclosure, bro. We were in foreclosure. We live in a 5,500 square foot home here. We couldn't pay our mortgage for 4.5 years. And
what year did you go into foreclosure?
Went into foreclosure right as soon as I hit Organo Gold. I hit Organo Gold in 2012.
Okay.
2013. I'm sorry. And I was in foreclosure in 2018. I was in foreclosure from 2013 to 2018.
So mentally, you're building. You've got a family, you've got a wife, you've got children, and you have to mentally deal with the banking issue. You have to mentally take this as a man, because as a man, I'm sure it hits you in your gut as a man because you've got a wife and kids. It's like, I've got to keep this house. Like, how did you get through that mentally, bro? Because that's a big deal for people looking at this.
Well, thank God my mother is now a retired therapist. That's one. At the time, again, it was personal development. It was talking to other mentors who had been through the same thing. I remember talking to Holton, Edwin Haynes, Tracy and Darnell Self. People had gone through some of the similar things. So I was like, well, if they've gone through it, that's part of the course. I got to go through it too. Then I remember sitting down and talking to a pastor friend of mine. And he said, look, man, he said, you're not a real leader until you've gone through everything. I said, well, I don't want to be a real leader then. He said, you're going to need to relate to so many different people. So you got to go burn in the fire. You got to have your Job experiences. And we had that Job experience for 5 years. And one thing that kept me strong, man, is there were times we would go away for the weekend and come home and there'd be a yellow stick on the front door, and I would get it off the door before my wife could get out the car to see the sticker, so it was crazy, man. We had to file bankruptcy. And I didn't know this. When you file bankruptcy and they discharge everything, that means you don't kind of have to pay it anymore. Dog, I ended up paying all the money from the bankruptcy, which was dumb. I didn't know. So now we filed bankruptcy. They say you don't have to pay it, but because I don't want to be indebted to anybody, I'm spending our money still trying to pay the bills, but at a slower rate than we had to pay them. So it was crazy, man. We had purchased some properties, and then when the real estate market crashed, we lost them, had to sell them. It was real interesting during that time, but it was building character because I'm still recruiting. I'm still recruiting, still building, still selling. I never miss ever a weekly meeting in 13 years. And we had one on Tuesday and one on Saturday. Never missed one. And my weekly meeting was an hour and a half away. So I was so locked into the process, into the system, that I didn't even pay attention to what would seem to be adversity.
Wow. That's a crazy story, bro, because a lot of people would have folded. And I'm just under the assumption that you use that as juice. And I like the fact that you said one of your mentors said you got to have your Job moment. Like you gotta all go through that, because that's something that really truly builds the character. Now, I'm assuming that some of that had to do with the fact that, and let me frame it like this, because I use me as an example, because maybe you fell into this trap, maybe you didn't, I don't know.
Okay.
When I was 27, I made my first $1 million, and I tell people my goal was to get rid of it as soon as possible. And they were like, well, what do you mean? I said, first of all, I didn't grow up around any money. So when you don't grow up around any money, you grow up in the streets, and people that have money, they got it a different way. So you think that there's 7 days in a week, you need 7 cars, you need a big house, you need this, you need that, blah, blah, blah. So you go and you spend a bunch. And $1 million plus, a couple of years later, it's 300 grand. I'm like, where did the money go? Like, what happened? Bought this, bought that, bought this. Luckily got it back. But I say all that to say that because of not having the right people around me when I had my first taste of money, that I went out and did a bunch of dumb stuff. Did you fall into that trap of, oh my goodness, I'm making some real money for the first time. Let me go buy this. Let me go buy that. Let me go look like this. Blah blah blah.
No.
Yeah, smart man.
And let me tell you why. I remember being, Paul J. Myers, a mentor of mine. He's since passed, a multi-billionaire. Lived out of Salado, Texas, Waco, Texas. You look him up, SMI Institute, that's him. So early on, the mentors in Legal Shield would take us to Paul. Well, we had to qualify to get to Paul J. Myers' house. That's number one. And so when we went there, and I remember the retreats, I still have them right here. They taught us, how not to get yourself in debt. They taught us how, to make sure you pay your taxes right and things of that nature. So, bruh, once I started making money, the foundation was set. And it wasn't set from home. It was set from those around me. Thank God. So now I didn't burn a lot of money because I didn't have a lot to burn. Now, when we left for Organo Gold, I went to Vacation Travel for a second, and I made 6 figures there also. And then we left Vacation Travel. We went to World Global Network, the Hilos. I made my first 7 figures there. Now that's in 2008. 2018 to tail end of 2019, we're still in foreclosure. You know, so once I made $1 million, that money disappeared faster than a cackalick's ass, dog. It was gone.
Right.
It was gone. So, and it was gone because I was trying to make things right and not be in debt and owe anybody. We weren't out. Now we were traveling a little bit here and there, but as far as buying stuff like jewelry and stuff, then no.
Gotcha. Okay. So that whole BK process and the foreclosure process, you just kind of living at your means and kind of caught up with you a little bit.
Yep. Because in my neighborhood, if you're not making $250,000 a year, you can't live in this neighborhood. You know, so we're in Southern New Jersey, in between New York and Philadelphia, Atlantic City, and DC. So we're right in the midst of a gorgeous place to live. And so we're barely scraping together 150,000, barely. And so it was tough, man. You know, between paying for propane and electricity and mortgage and all, the bills were so heavy, and I didn't want the bills to drop. Look, bro, we weren't doing that. Vacationing for us was a staycation or getting in the car. And I want you to think about this. I'm on stage promoting the dream, you know, the network marketing dream and how we make it. And I'm making the money, you know, but it was going up in bills. It was going up because we were so far behind. So some would say I prematurely quit my job. Maybe I should have held on to it for a while, but maybe not. Because if I did, I wouldn't be at, you know, 8 figures and above now.
Gotcha. Good point. You know, and I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of people get to a certain income level and then we live to that. And we've seen way too many people get caught. Now you're forced to make, you create this $20,000 a month lifestyle. You're forced to make 20 grand a month. You make a $50,000 a month lifestyle. You're forced to make $50,000 a month. So then if anything changes, now you playing catch up, which is what happened to you. So now I get it. I totally get it. And I hope you guys are taking notes from that, because this is that roller coaster ride.
Oh,
this
yeah.
It's not that pure. This is that you learn some things along the way and you get smarter. So let's take it one step further. You know, you mentioned 1.5-hour drive to your meeting, never missed a meeting that whole time frame. How important would you say that events, just in general, whether it be your company events or outside events, how do you feel that they affected your business growth?
It was everything, man. You know, we used to say tools and events. Now I don't really have a marketing tool, but events they're paramount, because events is where you meet people like yourself. Events is where you build belief. You know, events is where if you're that person and you have a non-supportive spouse and you meet this person who just made 20 million and they had a non-supportive spouse too, but they made it through, you learn that at events. Because events is where you see people in an incubator like us, but you also get a chance to grab one of these 6-figure, 8-figure, 10-figure earners and be in their ear for a little while. And if they see something in you, they're going to spill on you as a way of giving back. You can't get that if you don't go to the events, whether it's your weekly, whether it's your Super Saturdays on this once a month, whether it's the nationals, whether it's a leadership event. Let's say you decide to throw a leadership event down in your area, you know, like some of the other gurus in this industry have done. Man, I'm popping up, you know, because every man or woman is my superior. I can learn from everybody. And so you can only learn what you really need to learn at events.
That's true. That's true. And don't worry, we got one coming first quarter of 2024. We definitely got you. You already know. And you got, you know, tickets for show. That's the least of your concerns. Now, think about this. And I don't know if you can pinpoint it or not, because you've been in this game for 30 years. Can you pinpoint an event or a hallway conversation or something somebody said, somebody walked across stage, some moment at some event that some light bulb switched in your head?
Oh man, I got a whole bunch of them, but I'll give you the ones that really changed for me. I once heard Darnell Self say, I can't give half my heart. What that means is he can't be phony. So if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it 110%. I can't be phony. I can't be talking to Cedrick one way and then be talking to somebody with industry talk the other way. I can't do that. So that's number one. Holton said, the better the question you ask, the better the answer you receive. He also said, sometimes you need to think about what you're thinking about And not too many people think about what they think about. Not what they say, but what they think about.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Bruh. Think about what you think about, you know. And then Paul J. Meyer, you know, while he dropped many things, he taught me the art of creative listening. Like, you got to listen, not to respond. You got to listen, not to debate. But you ever talk to a mentor of yours or someone you talking to them and they're looking through you like they're listening to you, but it look like they're examining your eyes. Right. You have to learn how to listen with your heart, mind, and spirit. And once I started to learn how to do that, it was over, because I didn't know how to listen, man. I didn't know. I listened to respond, listen to be right, you know, listen to be in the conversation, listen to sound smart, all the dumb reasons to listen. You know, now I listen to listen, so I can empathize and sympathize and just be a better person.
Nice. I remember sitting down with Holton the first time, and I was like, this dude is different. I said he's different. I mean, it's something about people can pick up on energy, and certain people can walk into a room and it's like, I don't even know who that is, but that's somebody. You know, he has that kind of aura about himself. And then when you spend hours with him, it's like, oh, he's different. He's different. So I understand the mentors that you've come under and the things that you learned, which is absolutely amazing. So let's take it one step further. And we're not saying particular company names or this, that, because there's so many people looking. But man, oh man, oh man. Now we got to get a little deeper. So we go through the 6-figure times. We go for the $50 times, to the 4 figures, 5 figures, getting to the 6 figures. We have the little turmoil in our lives, and we make a transition, and we have our first 7-figure year. Then all of a sudden, something changes drastically, because the past couple of years of your life have been just a little bit different. So just as a prelude for some people, you know, Rabu travels all over the world all the time, front row tickets to the Lakers. I caught him on this interview. He's going to the Lakers tomorrow. Conversations with all just top A-listing actors. I mean, he's in the room with the who's who of who's who, sponsoring different events all over the place. You went from a certain number to a certain number. What was the shift, bro? What was the shift that took you from that 6, 7 to 8 figures plus? Like, what was that shift? Because people want to know that. I asked Brian Carruthers this question because he was one of the other guys, and then his brain started running. And I know we're cut from the same cloth. So I want, like, what was that shift that took you there?
Okay, the foundation was laid that when the right opportunity arrives, I was going to be ready. Now, I'm going to always give you 100%. Okay, I don't play that. Well, you're not supposed to use definite, so I'm not going to say always. If you're a cop and you pull me over and ask me if I'm speeding, I probably say I wasn't speeding. So to the best of my ability, I'm going to give you 100%. When it was June 19th. Now, so let me explain. So right now, you know, World Global Network fell apart. You know, the Hilo, that company fell apart, whatever. So then I said to myself, I'm never doing network marketing again, right? And I started, I had co-authored a book that sold over 50,000 copies with Ron Mueller, may he rest in peace. And during that time, I was on Facebook, and the only royalties I got off that book was $10 when I moved the book. So I want you to think about that. I said 50,000 copies sold, right? But I only got $10 off of when I moved the book. So I'm online, and I was giving the book away for free, literally. And people were, you know, sending me messages on inbox, and I moved a lot of books, you know, even though I was giving away for free because the books was paid for. So I stopped. World Global Network was over. I started doing that. And then I got with a gentleman who since passed away named Russell, who was my internet specialist. We started a printing company together, Russell Hayes. And a guy named Eric Eve introduced me to Russell Hayes because I was looking to get some flyers done, literally just looking to get some flyers done. And we became cool. You know, he had a real interesting background, but, you know, I accepted him with open arms, and we built something together. We were the #2 recognized printing design company in the world, second to Vistaprint.
Wow.
And it happened out of nowhere. We were doing flyers and marketing materials for every network marketing company out there. We started servicing the industry, and we couldn't go to the corporate people. We were selling it to the top leaders.
Right.
So if you needed flyers, websites, whatever you needed,
I was using it too.
Well, we was killing the game. So that trend, we made, I don't know, during that time, Russell and I made at least 300,000 each, right? So that was good. Then right around that time, FES pops up. Now my man Alfred had joined FES right before I joined World Global Network. So you know Alfred.
Yeah.
So Alfred's he's making tons of money or whatever. And I told him, I said, one day I'll jump in FES, and I did. And I made about $40,000 my first month, right? But said, bro, I was tired. And this is 2019. Then the pandemic hit. So transitioning out of FES, because now there's no home meetings. There's no meet with anybody. It's a wrap. You can't leave the house. So I'm home, and Russell sent me an email. Because Russell and I, once we start making decent money, we start playing around with crypto, and we lost our shirts. We were buying coins, and they weren't doing anything. We was buying DeFi coins, losing, holding on to them. Every coin I purchased, with the exception of a little bit of Bitcoin here and there, and I keep that modest, I lost on that damn near every coin, me personally. So I told him, I said, bro, don't send me anything else about any token purchases or anything like that. And he didn't. I said, don't text me, don't inbox me, nothing. I'm not playing with crypto, buying any tokens, holding on to tokens, not doing it anymore. And he sent me an email because he knew I wasn't going to answer any of his messages. And in this email, it was this little raggedy company called C3. That's all I'll say. And that little raggedy company, I think I turned $400 into $800 in one day. And that was a catalyst of 8 figures, literally. Because at that time, I was like, wait a minute. If this company exists, there's other ones out there like it that exist. And I went out there in the hunt to find them. And we found them, and we developed a social club, and the rest is history, bro.
Man, you built a very large social club, brother. I mean, you're one of the few people that I can say that have put a couple of 100,000 people just in a Facebook group. And for people to understand that the power of that is bananas, because I'll just use the number 300 for an example. If you got 300,000 people in a Facebook group that are active, not dead bodies that are active, but when you put a post up, post takes care of itself. it takes care of itself, because all you need is a small percentage of people. And you guys have harnessed that in a big way. So, man, I've modeled some of that, and I looked at that, man, like, these guys got this thing dialed in. You've got it dialed in. So let's finish this up here. Couple last minute questions here. So now you're at that level. Along the way, though, you didn't forget where you came from.
No.
Like, you didn't forget where you came from. So you're really big on giving back.
Absolutely.
And I see it all the time. You can tell a lot about a man based upon the fact that he's making money, but also the fact that he's giving back. And you've changed some people's lives, man. So let's talk about this, because I know that you've sponsored certain events, and you can talk about some of those events, different shows and different things like that, where you have given away Mercedes-Benzes. So let's talk about, because I can only imagine somebody that buys a raffle ticket, because how many times do we think about this? Like, we go somewhere and, oh yeah, right. But then that person, like, you didn't do it once or twice or three, like, you've done this multiple times. So where'd you get that idea from? And how does that really truly make you feel, man, when you see people smile on their face?
This is where it came from. And all my network marketing companies that I was part of, they all had car bonuses.
Right.
You had to bust your behind for the car bonus. And when you left that company, so did the car bonus, right? So I woke up one day, I said, you know what? I want to give away 3 Mercedes-Benz. And so I gave some concerts. So so we're a brand, but we don't make any money off of our brand. We don't have any products to sell. We don't have any services to sell. Nothing. I have nothing to sell you. I do a course, a master class, but that's just but I have no product or anything to sell you. We're just a group. Like we get together, we chill out, we party, we travel. We're just a group. We just talk amongst each other. So, like you said, that group grew over 300,000, but outside of social media, it just grew. Within social media, the page grew up to 50,000. Outside of social media, we grew well over 300,000.
Right.
So it got to a point where I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to take the money I'm making so we could build UIGISC up so when it becomes a household name, even though people don't know what it is, but a social club. So we started sponsoring concerts. We sponsored the Cardi B concert, and all you had to do was buy a ticket. You bought a ticket, you got in a concert, your ticket got called, you won a car. And the young lady who won this car, she was a single parent mom, 3 jobs, and her car was broke down.
Wow.
Look at God. Then we sponsored with my boys, Jock and Breeze, Clear Vision. We sponsored a celebrity softball game with Jalen Hurts. Devontae Smith. I'm sorry, with Devontae Smith. Jalen Hurts was there as well. And we gave away a car then. Then we started sponsoring events so we could get the UIGI name out there. We sponsored the second to Kia, for the NBA All-Star game. We sponsored the largest events in Cleveland during the NBA All-Star game. That was ridiculous. So we just started sponsoring events with the UIGI name on it. And what sponsoring means, it means just that, sponsoring. It's $100 grand, $200 grand that you don't get back because we're not selling anything, bro. But what we're doing, when people find us, they're like, wait a minute. These guys are $1 million worth of game. This cat on the Breakfast Club. They were Cardi B. They were Jadakiss. Then people like, okay, something must be going on, you know. And then we start, you know, got a write up in Forbes out of nowhere, you know, just getting written up in NASDAQ out of nowhere. When people start reaching out to you, it's like, what the heck are you guys doing? And we do have a PR team as well. But man, once I really started to understand, love people, and leverage money, I said, I'll put my dollars behind us getting big. Y'all just got to take the ball and roll with it. Because now when you talk to your family about UIGISC, you don't have to convince them. They go to the website, see all these stars, us partying all the time. They're like, all right, I'm in. Because all people want to do is have fun anyway.
Right.
And that was it, man. And I believe as long as we stay in that premise in the social club, because we're not financial planners or anything like that, we're just a group that like to have fun. But we bring in some of the sharpest minds, like yourself and other people who really know how to hit the target. And we just converse, man. And we believe in collaboration. We don't believe in competition at all. And that's how we win.
No, that's a good premise to follow by, man. And I've seen it with my own eyes. You know, I think that when people really understand the power of collaboration and the power of networking with the right people, because when you network with the right people, different people have different ideas. Some of them might make less money than you. Some of them make more money than you. You know, some of them are at the same level, but everybody has these collaborative ideas that people can bring together and create a movement. And that's what you guys have done. So that's good stuff. So tell us about the masterclass really quickly, man. Like, you put together the masterclass. What was the idea around the masterclass? And what is the masterclass? What's the whole premise of the masterclass?
I'm glad you asked. So the masterclass, I learned everything from Paul J. Meyer. Now, I'm not going to call it plagiarism because I have on video. He said to all of us in that room, he said, when I'm dead and gone, I want y'all to take this information and take it to the world because y'all can do it better than I can. So they no longer sell his tapes and all his foundation and stuff like that. So all of us, Brian Carruthers was in that room. Darnell Self was in that room. John Malott was in that room. Patrick Shaw was in that room. Mark Smith was in that room. Jonathan Green was in that room. Suleiman Rockman was in that room. Bro, I could go. Katrina Ferguson. Like, I could go on all the people who were in that room. Right. And so I started to really learn how to set goals. There's a science to setting goals. It's not just wishful thinking. It's not just praying. It's not just vision boards. There's a science, and I'll show you. So I put this together after leaving Paul J. Meyer's home. And I learned from Paul J. Myers in 2004, 2005. It didn't click for me until 2007 or 8, right? So I put this board together in 2007. July. My wife and I, we start doing our goals together. We do them at the end of the year for next year. We do them we start in September. And it's a whole course that we take. We take the course still every year. And everything I put on here, bro, came to fruition. I wanted to meet Magic Johnson. I met him twice. I want to own a home on the water. What we talked about before we started. You know what's happening right now in the bird. Bro, I wanted to own 2 apartments in foreign land. I now own 2 apartments in Dubai, right? I wanted a Lamborghini. I got 2 now. And I didn't know I was going to put 2 up. I put 2 up here, but I didn't know I was going to get 2. I wanted to give away $1 million in charity. Blew that out the water. I want to fly private. I fly private now. We weren't even 6-figure earners at the time, bro. We were not 6-figure earners at all. Okay. So I wanted to be a 6-figure earner. And then, and this was wishful thinking. I have a picture of Martin Luther King here because I said one day, you know, I wanted to be one of the greatest leaders in the world, you know. And so this was once the master class teaches you how to make everything you want, everything come into fruition, because it's a science. It's a science to setting goals. You know, it's not just everything that I put down, and it's scary, and I do it the right way, it happens. I didn't hit 8 figures on accident. It was deliberate, and it's a certain way you do it. And that's what the masterclass does. It shows people how to do it. And thousands of people have taken the class, and thousands of people have hit so many of their goals. It's scary.
Nice. That's the secret on steroids. It reminds me of when The Secret came out, but a lot of people didn't. It was great marketing. It was great marketing. It was great marketing because everything that they were saying is in the Bible, but it was just great marketing, but it didn't give people this step-by-step blueprint. And that's the blueprint. You got that blueprint with the masterclass. So that's good stuff. Well, wrapping this up, Rabu, you know, I've asked everybody this question at the end of the interviews. You know, the name of the book is called Untold Upline Secrets. And I want you to think about whether it was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was. I want you to think about whether it's an upline, sideline, mentor, someone who told you something that you didn't do, that you wish that you had did, or you wish that, or somebody told you something and you wish you would have applied that tip or technique earlier. Maybe you learned it 30 years ago, but you didn't apply it until 15 years ago or 10 years ago. If you could think of a quote unquote secret or something that happened, 1 or 2 things, what would you say?
One of my good friends and upline in Legal Shield, Johnny Davis, wouldn't be here today and have the success that I've had if it wasn't for him. Because he was part of ACN and he brought all the Del Zeno trainings, you know, to Legal Shield, to prepaid legal at the time. And I wish I stopped doing this earlier. Johnny told me in a leadership meeting amongst leaders, stop cussing people out. I swear to you, bro. We were getting a leadership thing, and I never called people out of name. So I'll never call you out of name. But every word was, and I don't mind cursing today, but in certain sectors, and you know, you got to fill the room out before you stop dropping F-bombs and everything. Right. And believe it or not, it worked. You know, I started to listen. I just chilled out with that. And I started to learn how to communicate better. Because some people say people who curse, they're the realest people in the world. But then some people say if you curse all the time, you don't have a good vernacular. Right. And so I was being looked at different ways because every word out my mouth was like my grandmother. You know, every word out my mouth was a damn curse, you know. And I chilled out on that, man. And thank God for Johnny Davis. And I was able to communicate in different circles, you know, and make things happen without people looking at me a side way and losing the message because the message was preceded by an F-bomb.
Right. The Jersey was coming out a lot is what you're trying to say.
Oh, the North New Jersey came out. You could take the kid out the hood, but it's hard to take the hood out the kid.
That part. And you know what's it's so interesting you say that. I learned a lot of that from Bugs, from being around Bugs and watching how Bugs would move.
Yes.
And being in rooms and he wouldn't curse at all. You know, like I can say that that's definitely a key aspect, because hey, it's communication. You know, at the end of the day, we're dealing with people. Money only comes from one place, and that's people. So the better we can communicate with those people, the better they can understand us and what we might be presenting. So I love that. I love that. Well, Rabu, brother, you're a busy guy. I know I caught you at the last minute here, man, and you get ready to leave out tomorrow. And I appreciate you popping on this particular interview series, brother. You know, the value that you've given us in the past 50 minutes, absolutely outstanding. I hope people really took some nuggets from this, because I know I did. I don't know if you noticed, but I was jotting down a couple of things on the side. Every time I do these interviews, I'm like, oh, I like that. Oh, I like it's because it's all about learning more, and becoming the best version of yourself. So I appreciate you, bro. Much success. Keep crushing it. And you know, when you get back in town and you get over here in the Bird, because I know you're gonna be here real soon, we got to link up, man. I'm looking forward to it, brother.
Yeah, man, I want to thank you for having me, bro. You are a solid dude. Like I said from the beginning, it's not that many people who come from the same cloth as you, and I appreciate you for being you. You know, appreciate the friendship that we've developed. And yep, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be down that way. So hopefully we get a chance to hang out, man. Thank you.
Looking forward to it, bro. Thanks so much, man. We appreciate you. All right, brother.